Father, there's a lot of need for you to be amongst us at this time. There's a lot of sadness in our community for losses that we've had. But you have reasons for what you do, and we understand that. Bless this group and bring them together, and let's get the job done together. And there's a lot of things going to be presented tonight, and guide us and help us in making the right decisions. And forgive us of our sins, and give us the blessings that we need in our life. In God's name we pray. Amen. Let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll bring the meeting to order. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make that motion.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Make that motion.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Public comments. Update on minimum housing. Eric Joseph.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Good to see you all this evening. I'll give you all an update on our most recent steps that we've taken to address minimum housing property maintenance concerns in town of Benson this evening. So just like to give you just a brief review of what our minimum code seeks to do. It's in Chapter 153 of our land usage ordinance, basically to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the town of Benson and ensure minimum health, minimum standards for fitness for the initial and the continued occupancy of buildings, as well as minimum standards and fitness for all commercial buildings. And so we do have a process. I'm not going to go through the whole process, but essentially our enforcement proceedings, we receive a complaint either from a community member, a tenant, or upon our investigation, we've discovered a property that is in need of property maintenance or may be in violation of our minimum housing ordinance. We'll conduct an inspection, issue a complaint, and notice of a hearing. We'll have an administrative hearing with the property owner and any interested parties with that property. After the hearing is conducted, we will send, the building inspector will send an order and a letter of determination instructing the property owner what they need to do with that structure to bring it into compliance. If it is deteriorated, then they will receive an order to repair. And we base it off of 50% of the tax value for that structure. It's considered dilapidated if the repairs would exceed 50%. And so the property owner would then receive an order to demolish the structure. They'll have roughly 90 days to comply. Now, these days they're prescribed, but we always try and work with property owners, so it's not always a straight 90 days, 30 days, 60 days. We're always seeking voluntary compliance, but roughly within that time frame. And so if they have complied, the case is closed. If they have not complied, that is when the case will likely be elevated to the board, to you all, where you would pass an order ordinance to demolish the structure, place a lien on the property to recoup those funds for demolition administrative fees. As I stated, we would like voluntary compliance, and so in effort to address the properties across town that were in need of property maintenance and were failing to meet the minimum housing standards, last year the planning department embarked on a task to survey the entire town and to determine properties that were not meeting the minimum standards. And they were in various degrees of need of property maintenance. Some of them were, they needed to fix a window. Some, the paint was peeling. Others, they were completely accessible, roof, foundation rotting, windows out, that really were in need of likely demolition. And so with that process, to date, we have 32 properties that have voluntarily been brought into compliance. They have completely done it on their own. We have not had to issue any enforcement on them. And so we're pleased that, a significant portion of those letters that went out, property owners did address the issues on their lots. 54 are still not in compliance, and then of those 54, 21 or so of those properties are working towards non-compliant or towards compliance. And so even further with that, some have been demolished. Others are potential properties that will be sold. And so the current property owner with the potential buyers, they're working that through. And so some of them are, still not compliant, but they may be in the process of being sold, and that new property owner will take over and do the necessary repairs to the property. And this is just an image of a property that we have several pictures. Our building inspector has gone over time over the last year, monitoring and getting photographs of the properties. And so this is just one example of what the condition was before and what it is today. Now, we do have some areas that are still in need of attention. And so because we're such a small staff, we are trying to strategically use our efforts in going after properties that, of course, that are non-compliant, that have not done anything, have not reached out to us to say that they are working towards compliance, severely dilapidated structures that just really need to be addressed. And so what we're doing now is initiating housing enforcement proceedings. Also, attention areas to keep in mind are 2 cases that were handled by Johnston County's Building Inspections Department. Now, these were non-residential buildings in our downtown district that the county took over last year and have worked with those property owners, but they've done some work but have not been brought into complete compliance. And so this week they have turned over those case files to the town to potentially go to that next step that would go to the board for further action.
Those, under fines now?
They have not been under fines, but that's the case with the town, that will take it and fine them if they don't comply. So,
Aaron, are these including any that they started on this week on Main Street?
I'm not sure. The 2 that are downtown, these have been cases that have been in the process.
Neighbors, they have been working.
No, that was someone that was one he was taking off the
metal.
metal to expose the brick. We do have another building that's in the downtown area that that was in need of code enforcement, but it has since sold, and now the new property owner is working to renovate that building. So
That's something else that you just touched on. Got some housing here. If it's not in compliance, and they have done nothing about bringing it in compliance, and it is sold to somebody else, now do they have the same time period to bring it up, or the time period that was put on the initial owner, it's still running?
it would still run. Technically, it would still run.
Do they know this?
They would know this, so we would get in contact with anyone. That's why I say that some of these properties are in talks of purchasing, and they reach out to us, we speak to them, so there's a line of open communication that they know, hey, this property is either has been identified for property maintenance and will be under code enforcement, or they are currently under code enforcement. So we try to keep that communication open with any potential buyers and with the property owners. And we try to work with them so that if someone purchases it and let's say they purchase it and they only have 30, they've been ordered to demolish or repair. And this is what, a case that we have today. We've had currently one house that is under minimum housing enforcement. We've had a hearing. The others that we've identified, we've decided to take, because there are 52 that are in non-compliance, to take the most severe, ones that are not occupied, that we can go after. With minimum housing, we have to do title searches for them. Ike is a big help with that in determining who has a vested interest, who's an interested party in that, because everyone has to be noticed. And sometimes with these older properties, the title search it reveals a mangled puzzle that has to be unraveled of who to actually notice when it comes down to enforcement. And so,
as far as enforcement, though, I'm concerned because it happens all the time in rental property and property. I'm going to go in and I'm going to buy this thing from William Neighbors. William said, I'll take $10,000 for it, and I don't know any background. I pay him. He puts the title in my name, not knowing that I have got 30 days to demolish that thing because nothing's been done on it.
Typically, if a property is under enforcement and it's about to be sold, though the team that's working, we get these a lot where attorneys and for closings, they will reach out to us and they'll say, hey, are there any assessments? Are there any liens? Are there anything that's associated with this property before it's sold? I'll check from my end on any type of code enforcement, active cases, any actual invoices that have been sent, any Ike looks to see, if any liens have been, so that's one way that if a property is about to be sold, that the buyers are looking at any type of assessments that are on that property. But like I said, we also work with them as well. And so this house right here, in fact, is on Main Street. We just had the hearing for her last week, and the neighbor has already reached out to us and say, I'd like to purchase that. Now, we're going to still proceed with our enforcement process, but if that new owner has decided to invest in this property, we're not going to be too gung-ho to come and bring it to you all, and we'll give them within reason. If it's 30 days left, we'll say, okay, well, we'll go ahead and give you another 90 days, another 180 days.
There's nothing in stone. We could start over with them if they were sincere in what they were doing.
Right, within reason.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, now, how many total properties you had 86 up there, and 54 of them not in compliance. 32 of them have got into compliance. But your figures up there, I counted 107.
Well, that's because of the
The 21
54.
properties down there, is that overlapping some of the others?
That's overlapping the
Okay.
non-compliant, but they have done work. They've been doing something to be brought into compliance. They're just not there yet. They,
So 21 of the 54 we're working towards it, but there's 33 that we've not had a response from. Is my math right on that?
32 have already brought themselves into compliance.
33 are not accounted for. 33
Right,
have not,
right, exactly.
33 have not responded to our.
Right, have not
notice.
done anything. And so of those 33, those are the ones that we are going out after specifically. So right now, we've identified 5 that we say, okay, of those, let's try and address these first because they take time. We can't do all 33 at once. Let's go after them and try to get them into compliance, bringing the officially, because the warning letter was not bringing them into official, calling them in for a hearing, or sending a letter of determination and a order to repair or demolish.
All those 33 or some of those properties owned by the same party, or are they all different?
Some of them are. Some of them are.
How many properties do we have on Main Street that you know of?
That are non.
That besides the one you showed, because I know which one that is, and it's been a police problem and everything else with people just staying in it.
We have one. One other property on Main Street.
One other.
Yes, 308 and 311. Our main streets that we see are Harnett, Woodall,
Yeah.
and Parish. And so these are some of the houses that are attention areas that are severely dilapidated that we are starting code enforcement on them today. And that is all I have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. I will say that many of the property owners, when we initially sent out those letters last summer, that they called, they said, what do I need to do? They have really been amenable to working with us and addressing the issues on their property. So that has been, a plus for us in our office, that we didn't have many property owners that were pushing back so strongly that they did not want to do anything. And so we'll continue this process and
In your monthly report, I noticed that you did have one hearing on March the 15th. Are you going to keep us updated in those monthly reports as you move forward with those other 5?
Yes.
Beyond?
Yes, I'll keep you updated on the progress on all of the others.
About 8 months ago, I think William and I went out and looked at a house that was the property. There was something about the property line and the ditch that ran it through the back of it. And they were talking about putting a townhouse in there, and finally they put postage signs so the police could keep the vagrants out of the house. Lincoln and Harnett. Do you know, is that a dead deal or nothing else had been happening? Because he was gung-ho at one time.
He's not said anything else to us about it.
Yeah, he's one of the ones that never reached out to us when he received the letter. And so that's that house
Didn't he want
right
a
there.
variance on the right side of the house? Yeah,
Right.
right next to the church.
On Harnett Street, West Harnett Street.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir. That's at that bottom right. So he has, spray painted, that's about it, that to keep out no trespassing under watch. But as far as doing anything with the property, no.
Ike's tried to reach out to him a couple times and he's not responded.
I really thought at one time he was gung-ho and he was gonna take it and really do
He was.
something. He
Yeah.
was.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
kind of backed off.
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks, Aaron.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You want to introduce Kim?
I would. So, since the beginning of this budget season, we have been working on system development fees for water and sewer. So tonight, Ms. Genevieve is going to come up and she is going to present you a report. I have also printed you all a copy of it. Now, this has to go out for public review, and Genevieve, I'm sure, will tell you all about that. But you guys all have a copy of it, so you can review it over the next couple weeks before our next meeting if you have any questions. But they're going to give you a presentation. Yes, this is the Wooten Company. I'm sorry. Oh, we got it. Just hit
You have it in
the new
PDF?
one today.
Oh, fantastic.
We got you.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Gary Hartong with the Wooten Company. Genevieve is with me this evening. She'll be giving the bulk of the presentation and the report. But I just wanted to get things kicked off and give a little bit of the background and talk a little bit, kind of the steps that we've gone through to get where we're at today, and then inform you about what some potential system development fees could look like in your new budget year for 24. So the purpose, again, of the system development fees is for new water and sewer customers connecting to the system. This is a fee that could be assessed by the town to provide the same level of service to those new customers that your existing customers currently receive. And so what we'd like to do is really kind of talk about what system development fees are, and more importantly, what they are not. What are the three methodologies? We're not going to dig deep, but there are three methodologies to calculate these. How are the fees calculated? If you implement a fee structure, what are the annual revenues that you could anticipate from that? And then lastly, we'd be happy to answer any questions. So again, system development fees allow a local government to charge developers for connection to major arterial system-wide water and sewer utilities. And I think the key words there that you want to make note of are arterial, system-wide. So these are fees that collect costs associated with your major infrastructure. It's not going to be a pump station that serves a small subdivision. It's going to be for things such as elevated tanks or your wastewater treatment plant, things of that nature, where everybody in the system benefits from the use of that particular asset. Those fees can be split into two ways. They can be split into covering existing assets that you have that still have capacity for new customers. And they can also be assessed for new improvements or things you have identified in your capital improvements plan that you want to construct that will also serve new customers and or your existing customers. Again, there's three ways to do this as prescribed by very specific methodology. Here are some things that SDF, so if you hear me say SDF, it's acronym for System Development Fee. They're not impact fees, they're not capacity fees, tap fees. All of those things are separate allowable charges that the town may or may not have, and they can continue to assess those. But if you decide to implement an SDF, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see again that those are costs for providing the same level of service to those new customers. They have to be tied to something. They can't just be an arbitrary number pulled out of the air. So they either need to be based on a depreciation schedule, we'll talk about that, but some form of living document where those costs can be identified and ascertained. And then really, they need to be on a specific timeline. They can't be forevermore, because as projects, as the town grows, as things happen, projects are completed, costs change. And so there's a review period every 5 to 10 years that is appropriate for review of the fees. A little bit of the background. This really got started, this methodology and the actual term system development fees really came about in 2017, about 5 years ago. It started with, some of you may remember, the lawsuit between Quality Built Homes and the town of Carthage many years ago, but in short, Carthage was charging impact fees, and they were not able to demonstrate to Quality Built Homes how those fees were calculated. The lawsuit ultimately resulted in Quality Built Homes winning that. And so it sent in a series of other steps here that you can see. But eventually, the North Carolina General Assembly in July of 2017 passed House Bill 436 that prescribed the methodology for calculating these fees and when and how they can be implemented. So as I mentioned, the direct cost, what do they need to be tied to? Well, there's a number of things depending on the methodology that you choose. We've identified a couple of them up here. The three that I would point out to you are the ones on the left side of the screen. The assets depreciation schedule. So for those big assets that you have already implemented, typically you depreciate those, and so we look at that schedule and take the depreciated value away from the cost of that asset. You also, debt service schedules. If there is debt service that's not being paid through your monthly water and sewer fees, that can be included as part of the system development fee. And then at the bottom there, the capital improvements plan. That's one of the most important documents in my opinion, especially if you're using one of these methodologies, because it's really the backbone. It's what really sets the tone for anything you want to do moving ahead. And adoption or implementation of that capital improvements plan really gives you the real source for the system development fee. Again, 3 methodologies. Not going to do a deep dive. This is included for your information. The first one is the buy-in, the equity cost method. The thought behind this approach is that all your customers, existing and new, equitably share in the cost of the remaining asset capacity. So this is really based on the replacement value of an existing asset. We use this method for all of the town's existing assets that still have capacity left. And again, you can see in that bottom bullet in the left-hand corner, the cost burden is shared by existing and new development. The assets on the right-hand side of the screen shown in orange, those are assets that are applicable or that can be used for this particular method. The second one's the incremental cost method. This approach is a little bit different. The thought behind this is that new customers essentially pay their way. In fact, new customers pay for their share of the incremental or the expanded capacity being provided to them. The main difference is that the asset, because it's new, is not really shared amongst all the customers, because this particular asset, maybe, let's say a water line extension or a sewer line extension, is really dedicated to serving new development, and so that incremental capacity is assessed to this particular asset. As I mentioned, the CIP is really your backbone of this particular method. So on the right-hand side of the screen, again, are similar things that you saw on the previous screen, but these are new expansions. Again, they're larger expansions to serve new capacity. And again, this is the estimated value. It has not been designed. It has not been built. We're using the CIP estimated value, professional judgment, so it's not a concrete number. The last one, as you might imagine, is you combine the two. We call it the combined cost method. Some assets are existing, have capacity. We'll calculate a fee for those. You've got new assets identified in your CIP. We'll calculate a separate fee for those. We add those two components together, and that really gives you the combined cost method, and we determined that was appropriate for the town of Benson. I'm going to turn over the microphone and the clicker to Genevieve. She's going to walk you through some of this methodology, not in too much detail, but we really want you to get a feeling for how we came up with the dollar numbers that we did, and then we'll answer some questions at the end.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everyone. So yes, let's start with the buy-in methodology, which is where we're looking at what you currently have in your system, your water and sewer system. We're looking at the cost of these assets that remain after they've been depreciated. This information was provided on the fixed asset schedule, or in cases where they weren't provided, we were able to estimate depreciated costs via the straight line methodology. For each asset, once we have the net cost, we then divide that cost by the capacity of that asset in order to get the dollar per gallon cost that could be recouped via SDFs. Throughout this process, we, as Gary was mentioning, we have to determine how eligible this asset is for SDF recuperation. We're only focused on major arterial infrastructure, and furthermore, how much of the capacity is left in that infrastructure that can go towards future growth. Based on our review, our analysis of your system, your eligible assets are your 8-inch, 12-inch, and 16-inch water lines, as well as your 10-inch gravity sewers and your Caroline Drive and South Walton Avenue pump stations. And you can see the SDFs calculated there for your water assets and your wastewater assets via the buy-in method. Moving on to the incremental method, this is where we're looking at future projects that may be implemented for your water and sewer system. A 5-year planning period was chosen for this SDF analysis, so we only looked at capital improvements plans that were going to occur within the next 5 years. That's what the 5-year analysis period means. Similar to the buy-in method, in order to estimate the net total cost, we had to take out any grant funding that was that might go into the project. Grants are funds that are provided from outside source, not by the town, so you can't really recoup those because it's essentially free money for you. You can only recoup costs that were paid for by the town, essentially. Again, similar to the buy-in method, you take the net cost, divide by the capacity of that asset, and that gives you a cost per gallon for that asset. Based on our review of your 5-year capital improvements projects, out of the 19 water projects, only 9 were considered eligible for SDFs. Out of the 13 wastewater projects, only 5 were considered eligible. And you can see the water SDF and sewer SDFs calculated up there based on the incremental method. Now I'm going to go through a bit of an example just so you can see how exactly these numbers are calculated. This project here is for your Benson wastewater treatment plant expansion, which is being expanded from 1.9 to 3.75 million gallons per day. Now, when this analysis was initially performed, we used the cost that was preliminary estimate as part of the EAA for the town. We are aware that it has since, the cost for that expansion has increased since then. After the 45-day comment period is completed, we'd be happy to redo those calculations with the costs as they are now. But for this, I'm just going to go through this as a quick example so you can see how the number, each SDF is calculated out for each project. So let's say that the project is still $35.3 million. You would, of course, take out any grant funding that goes in that. For this, we assume that this would be completely funded by the town, no grant funding allowed. And in terms of how eligible it was for SDFs, looking at the flows that are going to your plant now, we estimate about 66% of that 3.75 million gallon per day future capacity would go to future growth. Therefore, it is 66% eligible. And then, of course, you divide by that 3.75 million gallons per day capacity, and that gets you your cost of $4.66 per gallon for that project. Now, let's say the project is actually $57 million, and you have a $22 sorry?
22. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, she's aware. I am aware that you have a $22 million grant from ARPA. So if you were to say if the plant project was actually $57 million, you take out that $22 million, you would end up with the same $35 million net total cost. So you would end up with the same $4.66 cost. So just so we're clear on that. Okay, so we've gone through.
To understand where you're headed,
Yes, sir.
if it's $4.66 per gallon. What is that multiplied times in order to figure out what you're gonna pay charge the customer?
That is on the next slide, actually. I'm glad you asked. So we've calculated.
Because our bills will go up humongous.
Yes. Okay, so we've calculated the cost per gallon through the buy-in method, for the incremental method for your water and sewer. So we add those together for the combined method, and that gets you your total SDFs for water and total SDFs for sewer. And what we've done is we've essentially calculated, well, let's start with this slide here. So in total, what we've estimated for your maximum allowable water SDF is about 50 cents per gallon for water and $7.80 per gallon for sewer. Now, this is for a 5/8 inch residential meter. Oops, forgot to turn my own slide. In order to get to, those are the numbers for a 5/8 meter. In order to estimate what the SDFs will be for higher meters like commercial, industrial, institutional size meter connections, we used an equivalent ratio. So the equivalent ratio is essentially the measure of the volume of water that can pass through a meter size. So for a 5/8 inch meter, about 360 gallons per day can pass through that connection. For say 1.5 sized meter connection, which is a typical commercial meter size, it would be 5 times that 360. So that's where those equivalent ratios come from. So if you have a new commercial connection coming in, you would charge them $2.35 per gallon if they're connecting to your water system, and $39.05 if they're connecting per gallon if you're connecting to your sewer system. Now, I do want to emphasize that these are the maximum allowable SDFs that we can support you setting with your data. You can set it below it, you can set it at it. We do not recommend setting it higher than that.
So what you're saying, go back one.
Oh, sorry.
So if I was adding a residential meter, a 5/8 inch meter, you would base it off of an average of 360 gallons a day. My SDF fee to the town would be $8 times 360 gallons.
Yeah, essentially. That's actually, that's essentially what these numbers are, is that at $8 times that 360 gallons per day per connection. So this is the slide I think would be a bit simpler to understand. So if you say have like a subdivision coming in, they want to build like 20 homes, and they're connecting both to your water and sewer system, you would say, okay, pay us $2,980 per house. That's essentially what that means.
What are we at right now?
Probably 500.
They don't pay.
We don't pay
Oh.
any
They pay
SDF.
tap, well,
We
and,
pay
and
tap
it-
fees.
yeah,
Tap
and-
fees.
but if the developer does the tap, then they're just paying for the meter, because a lot of the developers are doing the taps.
If
and
we do
we're-
the taps
we're
ourselves
overseeing it.
though, then we add this to the meter fee.
Well, we would do it even if we didn't do the tap, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Lisa.
So, yeah, he's nodding his head yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if I do 24 home subdivision, that's
Yeah.
$75,000 basically in SDFs
That they're paying towards our
on
system.
top of tap fees, unless I put the taps in myself.
Right.
And then
But
the meter.
let me ask you, if they take off and say, I'm not paying this too high, I'm gonna go to Clayton and Wake County or whatever,
They're full.
they're full, but how does that compare with the surroundings?
We actually do have a later slide about that.
Just wait one second.
Keep getting ahead of-
Don't get ahead of her.
Let me go through the rest of the slides, and I promise we'll get there.
Let's go ahead and figure out why we don't get grant funded.
So the next, I'll try and breeze through the slides, get to answering your questions soon. This is just, let's assume that you set your SDFs at these maximum numbers. We thought we'd do a little bit of revenue forecasting for you. This is just explaining how we came to, first we have to estimate, well, how fast are the connections going to be growing in your town? We looked at the U.S. Census data, we looked at the proposed developments that you have coming in the near future, and we came up with these annual growth rates. So the number of residential connections will grow at 3% annually. Not anything non-residential will grow at like 0.5%. And for every new connection, you multiply that by the cost per connection that we showed a couple slides earlier, and that's how you get where we get the revenue. So So at the end of 5 years, if you were to set them at these maximum allowable SDS costs, you would see these revenues. So you get about 51,000 in water revenue and 747,000 in sewer revenue. Again, this is assuming we see the 3% annual growth rate that we have projected, and you are, of course, setting your maximum allowable SDFs at these numbers. In conclusion, we recommend setting your SDFs using these numbers based on the combined method, and this is what you'll be seeing in terms of the revenue you'll generate over the course of the next 5 years. I'm going to turn it back over to Gary, where he is going to answer your question for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad Genevieve took that question. So just moving on, what are the next steps? So we have presented the information to you in a report form. If the town does decide to move forward, there is a required minimum 45-day public comment period. Don't make it 43, don't make it 44, please make it 45 or you have to start the process over. So I would aim for a couple days after that just to be sure. And then at that point, you can have a public hearing where anybody from the public can obviously make comment in similar session to where we are now. If there are any adjustments that need to be made to this report, either based on the public's comment or by further comment from the town, we can make those revisions to the final report. And then thereafter, the town has the option to, again, implement the maximum fee schedule or any schedule less than the numbers that we have presented. You just cannot adopt anything greater than that. So the question came up, so what are our neighbors doing? This data is a couple years old. I think it's 2 years old as far as, and I apologize, it's difficult to read, but this shows you what other water system development fees in North Carolina communities, their range. On the left is the less than $500 on the residential side, and it moves by $500 increments as you move towards the right. So you can see a lot of communities in North Carolina are in that $1,000 to $2,000 range, if I'm reading that correctly from here. And my slide's even smaller, so I apologize. So a lot of folks are in that $1,000 to $2,000 range on the residential. Commercial, you'll see that it's very similar. You see your peak there early in that second column.
Are those slides based off the same gallons per day? So if I'm in a $1,000 range, is that divided by 360, which means the fee's going to be $277 per gallon?
Yeah, so we can, there's a couple ways you can implement those fees. So again, the fee schedule that we presented to you was based on 360 gallons per day.
Okay.
Let's say a typical residential customer only uses 240 gallons per day. You can amend that fee schedule based on 240 gallons per day. Apply that same dollar per gallon that we gave you, and it's going to result in about a number that's about 2/3 of the number that we just presented.
I'm just trying to figure out if the communities, and you probably didn't even do this graph, but the communities in this graph, are they using the same gallons per day that we do to come up with their fees? Are they charging a less of a rate than the $8? Because this just goes up.
I would say yeah, I understand your question. I think most of them are in that 240 to 360 range. I would assume many of them are on the 360, which is probably high. Water consumption is drastically reduced in recent years. It's probably closer to that 240, 300, but 360 is, again, the prescribed methodology, so that's what we use. But if you decide that 240 or a number less than 360 is appropriate, we can certainly run those numbers for you and provide you an updated fee schedule accordingly.
Well, what I'm trying to understand is if we pay $2.40 for 1,000 gallons of water, and we're going to add 3 cents to every gallon, that's adding 100 to 3, and so you're going to have a humongous bill if those numbers you're throwing out is right.
So
in sewer, we
It's just new. I think
we
it's-
charge $7.10 a
That's
thousand.
already, development's already structured. This is a one-time fee if I add development. So if I go out there and put 20 lots in, they're gonna charge me per lot that $1,000 to $2,000 per house for new development.
Yeah.
The existing customers don't get charged any of this. It's only on people that doing new development in town.
That's correct.
So, and this is where we got to think, when house affordability is a huge thing right now, what are we gonna do? We're gonna take that fee and we're gonna pass it on to the consumer, and so that means your house prices are gonna go up. So just think about that too.
But it's also paying for your system that they're
That's true.
pushing into.
There's
And,
a
Who else
road
in
there.
and the
Johnson
water
County
and
is
sewer has a lot of debt right now.
So what?
I said we hadn't been paying for a
You're
system.
right. You're exactly right.
That's why,
How does this correlate to electrical?
This is just water and sewer.
I know, but is there not any future system development fees?
I don't know that there's any, like, law to what, like, system development fees are. I mean, that's something we need to also look at. I mean, if they're gonna come into our system, you know, how much are we willing to charge? The difference with water and sewer and with electric is electric has zero debt, and our return is a lot faster than it is with water and sewer. That's why we've never really charged them for. Now, if you have existing customers that are overhead and want to go underground, they're going to pay for that. But new people coming in, we typically cover it. They pay for, you know, the cost of a meter, but the actual setting up and development of it, we're doing because the return is so quick.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's fine. I believe the question was asked, what other communities in Johnston County are assessing them? I can tell you that Johnston County has put in a fee. I don't have that information with me, but it is on their website. I pulled it a couple weeks ago. Dunn is currently in the process of, they're in their public comment period now. I imagine that they will be implementing their SDF fee schedule prior to July 1st. And I'm trying to think if anybody else right now has
I'll find
fees.
out who has it.
Sure, and it would be it would be a good comparison. We can pull that information for you as well. We were doing a similar exercise not too long ago. So just to point out one more thing on this screen, we mentioned the $169 for Benson. That would fall in that first column. So you'd be really lower than most other North Carolina communities based on this data from 2 years ago. Wastewater side's a little bit different. You can see that peak is evened out a little bit. Genevieve mentioned the number $2,812 to you on the sewer side, which falls in that sixth, in the left, that left square. It falls over there in the sixth column, so about halfway through there. And again, a lot of that has to do with the large treatment plant project in front of you, which is several $1 million. Certainly affects that number to the tune of about $5. So that is the conclusion of the report information summarized. I know we went through a lot of numbers. I apologize, but we really wanted you to understand that this is a process and not numbers that we pull out of thin air. So happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Does anybody else have a question? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Okay, Kim.
All righty. So the next presentation you have is kind of a continuation from the board retreat. We have Miss Angela Strickland from Electricity and Mr. Blake Reynolds from Tyler Technology. And we briefly talked about at the board retreat some of the roadblocks we've ran into in regards to hosting of our our billing software. And we all know I've been asking for financial software for about 4 years now. So if we're going to take the leap, now's the time. So Angela is here to answer any questions on the electricity side, and then Tyler's going to give a short presentation. Blake is going to give a short presentation. And then if you have any questions on the Tyler side, then he's here.
Thank you very much for having me here today, Mayor and Commissioners. I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you. You have your slide deck. I think you have a copy of the slides in front of you, but I also have them up here. Basically, some of the history concerning electricities is that in the 2000s, early 2000s, we went to some of our members and we wanted to see if we could help put together a community model for hosting software. And so we did that, and it started in probably about the 2003, 2004, and we started hosting some of our members with their different types of software. And what happened is that we have determined that it's no longer cost effective for you to do this. And let me tell you why. There have been a lot of changes. We had 6 members that we host the utility billing using a platform called North Star, and you are one of those 6 customers that does that. We also we had Tyler utility billing, which Blake is from Tyler. We were hosting that for some of our members. And then we were also hosting another tool that you use called NextGrid, which is your AMI software. And what has happened is that our costs the costs are continuing to increase, but also the vendors can host the software cheaper than we can. And so it's like technology's changing, and so the costs are changing. And when our members find out that the vendor can host it cheaper, they're moving towards the vendor. And so what's happened is Tyler's moving all of their members to the cloud, to their cloud. NextGrid is moving all of their members to the cloud. And so we still have the 5 North Star cities, and you are one of those. And your cost is going to increase over the next several years if you stay with our model. And we felt that we needed to be honest with you and open and upfront and let you know that it's increasing. And there are a lot of reasons that it's increasing, and we'll go through some of that as we go through some more of the slides. But the bottom line is the industry is moving, technology is moving to everything being hosted in the cloud, and the vendors can do it much cheaper than we can because they have thousands of servers that they host. They have hundreds of customers that they host. And so their cost is much cheaper than the way that we can do it now at Electricities. So the hosting options that we wanted to make sure that we presented to you include staying with us, and there will be 5 members. There are currently 5 members that are left in this, and they are all North Star customers. And we are the most expensive option. And the reason that we are is because 24 cities split the cost of the shared community model, and now we're going from 24 cities down to 5. And so your costs will increase slowly the first couple of years, but then it's going to take off. Also, cyber insurance is increasing. This year, the cost for cyber insurance is increasing 37%. Next year is projected to increase 28%. And we have to keep cyber insurance because we're hosting your client information, your customer information, and so we have to have that. And so those are a couple of reasons that the costs are beginning to increase. The other option that you have is staying with North Star and going to their cloud. And the pricing that they gave us, when we went back and asked them for all of the cost, they gave us pricing so that every single one of our 5 cities had to move to their cloud. If one city decides not to move, the costs are invalid. And so they will be dependent upon how each city can negotiate that cost with North Star. So your costs are going to increase more than likely.
And it's all, we have to all buy into the same product.
You all have to buy, everybody has to buy into North Star, and you also have to implement a new tool, a new customer portal called Silverblaze. And the reason that you have to do that is because that's the only tool they can use to handle your prepay software that you use. And so that's the way that they put that out, and they tried to make it so that all 5 of my cities, all 5 of the Electricities North Star customers had to buy that so that they could sell that product and be able to implement that. And they're trying to make all of the cities cookie cutter so that all of the cities run the same software and use all of it exactly the same way from that standpoint. And North Star gave us a projection that it would take about 15 months to move all 5 cities, and they would treat all 5 cities as one big utility, and then they would carve it up and move each city at a point. They would move, you'd have to migrate to their latest version. Then after you migrate to the latest version, you have to migrate to Silver Blaze. And then after you migrate to Silver Blaze, then you move to their cloud. So there's a step-by-step process that you would have to follow, and the other 4 cities would have to do the same thing. And it's in a specific order is how they presented that. Tyler Technologies, that gives you your biggest savings. The pricing that we've included, we have two charts in here. One includes financials and one does not. And the reason that we included the one with financials is because we knew that Kim has been looking at that for several years. And the cost is not that great to include. You have a lot of savings that you'll be getting, and so you can literally almost pay for your financial system with the savings. The functionality in Tyler is very similar to North Star, and so they do offer a good product. The core functionality is basically the same. Both of the tools, North Star and Tyler, it will get the job done. You do not. Both of them are very good products, and really the question is, what is the best solution for the town of Benson? What works best for you? And that's really the decision that has to be made.
How will Electric Cities be involved with this?
We will partner with the utility billing staff and Tyler, and we will help with the project management. We will help make sure that the system gets operational and that it's implemented the way that it needs to be to work in the way that you need it to work for your line of business.
So our costs will go up having Tyler and Electric Cities involved in it?
No, sir. We have baked in costs. We have put in costs. We did a cost analysis, a 10-year cost analysis, and we put in Electricity's cost and what we project those to be over the next 10 years. We also put in what we project for the North Star cost to be if you go to their cloud, and then we also put in the Tyler cost. And those are in the graph that I have for you. We also included an additional $125,000 in that cost analysis that we did for the first 2 years. And the reason that we did that is because we didn't know if any of our cities would need additional training, any additional support. So we also included that in the numbers for Tyler and North Star. So that $125,000 is in those numbers and in the analysis that we did.
I just hope we don't get into what we did to start with AMIs. Like the city was going to host us for $60,000 a year, and you know what the cost is now.
Why didn't the entire 24 go with Tyler? I mean, we got 5 that's hosted and 24 that's dropped out.
Okay, so we had a total of 24.
Okay.
16 were with AMI, your NextGrid system. So we were hosting their software, but it was for NextGrid, for AMI. So 16 were for AMI, which is your meters.
Yeah.
6 of them were with Tyler, and 6 of them were with North Star. So that's what comprised your 24.
So when we were given North Star back in 2013, because y'all actually had the presentation the year before I came,
Yeah.
North Star was the one that was really the leader. But when we bought into it, my understanding, when we bought in, we were the last city to buy in, and then Tyler came through Electricities, and that was a second option, and it was a cheaper option, and so some of the cities went into Tyler instead of North Star.
Correct. And actually, if you look at the next slide, we formed a partnership with them in 2016, and the reason that we did that is because we had a group of some of our members as well as Electricity's employees. They released this RFP for utility billing and financial software, and they were very focused on the smaller utilities and smaller cities, smaller towns. And so Tyler was based on cost, functionality, and the strength of the company. They made that decision. And since then, most of our members have elected to go with Tyler instead of a North Star because of their pricing. Their pricing, in my opinion, it is because of their pricing, and they have similar functionality in their system. So 16 Electricity's members currently utilize Tyler as their utility billing software. And they also, because of the partnership that we develop with them, they offer our members a little bit of a discount on the licensing and the fees.
And let me just make sure I'm clear. The 5 that we're referring to, if we have an issue right now, we call Angela's team.
Correct.
The 16 that have Tyler, call Tyler if they have an issue, correct? Y'all are so once we do the switch over and they're no longer hosting us, then we will call
Tyler.
Blake's team to say, okay, we need help with this, as opposed to calling Electricities. That's how Electricities falls out of this picture. That's why you won't see additional cost incurred through Electricities. Does that make sense?
Somewhat.
Okay.
So Electricity is gonna help us on board.
They're gonna help us implement.
You're done with
Yes.
Electricity. Y'all are gonna back away.
Well, we're not
Well-
going to back away. If you really have an issue, we have some members that have had issues once they've gone with Tyler, and we still maintain a relationship with them. We have monthly calls with Tyler. We talk about any issues, and so if a city does have a major issue, they can call PJ or I, and we have a direct line into Tyler, and we can reach out to them, and I can tell you they are very responsive.
It'll be much like our NextGrid relationship, where we're hosted through NextGrid now and not Electricities. But if I can't get through to them, I call PJ, and I let PJ kind of hammer them. So it'll be that same type of relationship. We'll go to Tyler first if we need help. If we can't get them, then I'll call Angela and say, I need you to put some pressure on them. But I don't anticipate, I've talked at the conferences I've been to, I've talked to several finance directors that use Tyler technology. I've never heard, a real crossword come out of them. So, and I've dealt with Harris directly here, because that was the product we had prior to North Star. And, there was not the best communication back and forth.
Yeah, I remember, and Electric City stepped in to help us out, and then it got to be a big problem on both ends, and our other manager was really pushing what was up there, and this board at that time went along with it, and there wasn't enough research, but that's in the past.
Right.
I
can
think-
tell you-
I think it's a no-brainer right now with Tyler. We've got to have something. And North Star, approximately, if we went with North Star, approximately 15 months. What's going to happen in 15 months? The way things are changing so fast.
Yeah.
We don't know. By the time we get to 15 months with North Star, then they're going to add on another 15 months to do something else.
I don't know. And I'll tell you this too, when we talk about support, because our financial software is still with Harris, it's Open Windows Financial. There is 2 people on their support team. So if we have an issue, we're going to talk to one of the 2 that support that product, and we may get a response today, tomorrow, next week. But if that gives you any inclination of the support we're getting right now just on our financial side. And we know them both, we know them both by name, because if we have to call them, it's the same 2. It's the same 2 I've been dealing with for the last 6 years. But, to me, that's not a robust support system if that's all you're giving me for everybody that uses it.
Well, is Electric City's going to all 5 and giving them the same presentation that you're giving us?
Well,
And if all 5 go in with everybody that's got Taylor, will it change the cost of this because they've got more coming into them?
So first off, yes, Electricities went to all of the members that are current North Star customers. We did a presentation to every one of the members. We did the same presentation minus whatever specifics each city had. We did not go through this presentation that you have. This is a little bit higher level than the one we did with the individual city members. And we have not, this is the first time I have been asked to come to any of the board meetings. So you're first from that perspective. But I can tell you that all of our cities are looking at what is the best option for them. And cost weigh a big factor.
So now I'm understanding you to say that all 5 have to come into it. Is that right?
If you choose to go with North Star, the pricing that that vendor gave us, all 5 cities have to go with that vendor, or else prices increase.
And they all have to go into what we have, because we have the most robust. We have AMI and we have prepay. And the
Correct.
other 4 cities don't have that.
So what are the chances, say, we're gonna stick, what are the chances that they're gonna do that?
The chances are pretty much slim.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if I were another city and we didn't have AMI or prepay, I would say, I'm not paying that money for something we don't have.
Right.
Something we could get in the future, but it was a lot of money for us to move to AMI. Not every city can do that. So, I mean, if it were me, I'd say no, but it's very slim.
And I might just add, because I'm Blake with Tyler, and I'll chime in for one. We did go do demonstrations at 5 cities just in the last couple of weeks.
Yes, we
We've
did.
got contracts in hand at 2 of those being reviewed right now. So 2 of those will eventually, once we hammer out the contract language, will come over.
So that means North Star is not even an
North
option.
Star, not
So
at this price.
theoretically, if those two-
Right.
So that's not an option, so
It means the pricing will go up.
It means the pricing will go up.
I just wanna make sure I understand the hierarchy here. So are we still reporting to Electric Cities, and this is Electric Cities vendor, or are we hiring Tyler directly, and Electric Cities is no longer in this?
Electric cities will no longer be in it once it's implemented,
Okay, so.
unless I need further support and I need somebody to kind of
So
put
does
pressure.
Tyler, since North Star's off the table, it sounds like, because of the expense and the 5 and all that, is Tyler the only other option that we've looked at?
I have looked at several options over the last few years with the help of PJ, who's at Electric Cities. For me, Tyler was the more logical. It's a very easy system to work through. I mean, the reporting system you can't really beat on their financial side. I mean, you're going to get more robust reports than what you're getting now.
Y'all been in a partnership with, you're probably fixing to answer all my questions. I'm gonna let you do that. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. We want you to ask questions because we do want to help you come to the right decision for the city of, for your town, for the town of Benson. I only have a couple more slides. Did you want to jump in?
No, I
Okay.
did.
Basically, the core functionality between the 2 systems, North Star and Tyler, they are very similar. And we actually did a comparison. We have a matrix. We went through that. North Star has some more features that have a little bit more widespread adoption, because North Star has been in this area for a long time. And Tyler is actively investing and working with their customers and some of their early adopters to get these things in place. They do offer a prepay solution, and they also have a flat file integration for AMI, which is what you use with NextGrid. And then their features, like mobile work orders, it is much more affordable than some of the other vendors, such as North Star. Let's see. Here we go. So if you look at your graph, the 10-year cost comparison, this is the cost that we estimate, and it's over a 10-year period. You have the Tyler is in the red-orange color, North Star is in the green, and Electric Cities is in the blue. And I have explained a little bit about why our costs are going up. We had 24 members splitting the cost. Now we're going down to 5. And then cyber insurance is increasing, as well as generally costs are rising everywhere. And so those are some of the key reasons why our costs are going up. In the costing that we did for those lines, for the green, for the North Star and for utility billing, the first 2 years we did bake in $125,000 in case there was additional things that the city might need, and we did that for all of our 5 members when we presented the business case to each one of them. And so you can see that Electricity's total cost over 10 years is approximately $1.7 million. North Star is $800,000, closer to $7 million, and Tyler is closer to $500,000. And so your gain and loss, you can see if you look at North Star and compare it to Electricities, you're saving about $800,000. Tyler is about 1.2 million. And then if you look at Tyler versus North Star, you're saving $350,000 roughly. And our costs start out lower, but they increase sharply as people start dropping off our hosting model. And that's just how it goes. The North Star and Tyler costs do include an initial one-time migration fee. Both vendors charge that, and so that is in these numbers as well. And then we did include that $125,000 for additional consultancy.
Is that charged only if we need it, or is that charged regardless?
No, it is if you need it. It's whatever you need. We just included it because we were trying to make sure that every city, each of these 5 members, had everything they needed to be able to move to whatever utility billing system they wanted to go to. And we looked at these 2 because we're in partnerships with both of them. If you look at the utility billing with Tyler Financial Costs, the 10-year cost model, you can see that the cost, we do not have any cost for North Star financial package, but we do include the one for Tyler. And you can see that there is an overall loss of $137,000, but that's over 10 years. So basically, you're paying an additional $13,000 per year for a financial package over what you would be paying if you stayed with us. With North Star, sorry.
And just keep in mind, that's a financial package that has fixed assets, accounts payable, general ledger,
That would replace your DOS system.
pretty much. And we don't have fixed assets, so keep that in mind. And and it has HR sweep in there.
Yes.
And we paid $10,000 last year to Harris just for accounts payable and general ledger.
So if we bring this on, then we would discontinue using Harris.
Oh, yeah.
And so we would.
Yeah, but keep in mind, and I mentioned this before, we can integrate billing anytime throughout the year, but you're going to integrate financial at the beginning of a fiscal year. So we would work 2024 fiscal year to get the numbers meshed out, get the accounts done, combine general fund back. We would work through that, and then it would go live July 1 of 2025. Am I getting my name? Yeah, no, July 1 of 2024. Yeah. Yep.
So the system that this board just approved last month that's coming in is going to work.
We didn't
What
approve it.
system?
We just told them to bring it to us at the board meeting.
You
is them
didn't-
bringing it to
This
us.
is us bringing it to
We
you.
didn't vote to approve it.
You didn't vote anything, and you won't vote tonight because I don't have a contract in hand yet, but you asked for kind of more clarification, so that's why we asked them to come, to give you that more clarification.
Does anybody have any more questions of her? Let's get Tyler up, and, are you finished?
I am. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor, Board. I'll try to go through this quickly. Some of the stuff that Angela talked about, I'm going to repeat as well, but I'm Blake Reynolds. I'm the Senior Account Executive for Tyler here in North Carolina. I've been with Tyler for 33 years, so have seen a lot of changes in the technology, the technology world over the last several years, but just wanted to point out that Tyler is the largest provider of local government software in the nation. There's not another company out there that has more customers than we do in various sizes. We've got clients all the way from the smallest towns you can think of. I live in Georgia. I've got towns down there, 1,500 population, all the way up to close to 100. So we've got clients that cover the entire spectrum of size. But the division that I work for is called municipal and schools. So our focus is entirely towns the size of Benson. If you look at, what we're looking at tonight, there are about 2,600 implementations of this across the country, and the vast majority of those fall in towns in the population range between 4,000 or 5,000 to about 15,000. So that's really kind of the sweet spot we chase. Couple of things I just want to kind of touch on some of these. We've got a good number of sites across the country. Our average tenure for our employees is more than 10 years. Like I said, I've been here 33. We've got 500 employees. A good number, more than 2 are for support. So she has more than 2 people she can call for support on that. 40% of our employees have worked in the public sector, so we have finance directors, utility directors, folks like that work for us, so they've got a lot of real-world experience. And we've got better than a 99% client retention rate. So our clients that come on board tend to stay with us for a long time. In North Carolina, there are 57, actually 58, that changed yesterday. There's 58 cities, towns in North Carolina running what y'all are considering. Of those 58, 17 of those are Electricity's members, but that number does not include contracts that I have out to 3 of them right now. 2 of those 5 and then 1 other that have contracts in hand. So that number will go to 20. And it's been a busy, busy state for us. I mean, and you want to go with a company that's got a lot of your peers that are making the same decision. So in the last 12 months, we've had 11 cities sign on just in the last 12 months. So that's, almost 1 a month of your peers that are coming on board. And those 57 obviously are not just Electricity's town. I mean, Dunn is a client of mine. Anger, towns like that. So not electric utilities. And then the other thing I kind of wanted to point out that makes Tyler a little bit unique is that when I started in 1990, it was character-based, green screen, no Windows functionality at all. And all the way to where we are today in 2023, at no point did our clients ever have to buy that next version of the software. You get those upgrades, you get those next versions of whatever software you decide to go with, is just part of being a client. So the advantage to that is when I started in 90, cell phones didn't even exist. And so the things that you can do today with software, we never even dreamed of doing in 1990. And so you're not only investing in software for what it looks like today in 2023, but what it's going to look like in 2043, 2053, which I hope to be retired by then. And support, and I just throw this up here, support is a crucial part of the whole process. Again, for Kim and being able to contact more than 2 people, we take all of our calls live. She has support hours available to her from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. because we do have West Coast clients that we stay open to take care of. So a lot of different ways that she can get to support, live chat. We've got a community of users, which is a lot like the North Carolina listserv, where cities can visit among themselves. And then a lot of things kind of talking about getting a better handle on, like your fixed assets or purchasing. Do y'all run purchase orders now? I don't remember. So those sorts of things, this is now being in the cloud and having the access to mobile phones, iPads, and things like that. If Kim or whoever was at a GFOA conference or at the Electricity's conference, she could approve a requisition or somebody's time off request or a budget. Somebody wants to amend the budget or whatever, all from a cell phone if she wanted to. So it really puts the application in your hands. It maximizes their their time and their ability to do their job really anywhere, anytime, on any sort of device. So being in the cloud, especially during the COVID years, was a huge benefit for our clients, and not having to have City Hall open. And then also a mobile service order piece that is part of what we've proposed, and this is actually kind of a sample of that for the field personnel to have an iPad or a tablet out in the field doing those service orders or those work orders real time. As they create a service order here in the back office, it'll pop up on an iPad or a tablet out in the field. Those guys can do whatever that work is. When they complete that, it can update the back office. So they're not having to drive back and forth. You're not having to radio them, those sorts of things.
So it has like a purchasing system built in?
It does. It does have a purchasing system built in. So part of what is in here, and that's one of the things, you could create a requisition that's going to go through whatever your business practices are for an approval. Somebody can approve that remotely, or if they're here in the office. The beauty of running for you all as a board, and even the department heads, the beauty of running a purchasing system like what we offer, is that you know up to the second how much money you have in your budget. If I'm a department head and I'm sitting across town and I want to know how much money do I have in my budget, I pull up one of those dashboards that you saw a minute ago. That is up to the second how much money I have left in my budget. So it'll give you all a better handle on reporting and so forth for the budget as well.
That's great.
And then lastly, I've got a mobile app out here your citizens can download. So they can see a graph of their consumption, they can pay their bill from that app, they can see their PDF copy of their bill from that app, all sorts of things. So we try to give your citizens as many ways to pay as possible. It's all about making it easy for them to pay, whether they're calling in on a phone system, IVR system, paying online, paying through an app, paying from a text. They can pay. We can send them a text of their bill. They can pay it from that bill or from that text. So just trying to make things as easy as possible.
Security system is very good on it. You've never had any problems?
No. I mean, every system, every implementation is different. One of the great advantages of having a partnership with Electricities is that Angela, PJ, Beth, all of them, they're great to work with if we're needing data pulled or if we need some help in trying to clean that data up. They're great at doing that for us. Also, like Angela said, if somebody's having some issues with something, PJ emails me, I get the right people involved. But as far as auditing, you'll find that I think your auditors are going to be pretty pleased with how easy it is to audit, the types of reports they can get out, how easy it is to push things into Excel, those sorts of things, those tools that they use. Again, of the 500 and some odd employees we have, I used to have a figure for this. We have I think it's about right around 60 CPAs that work for us. So whether those people are in implementation or they're in support, some of them are even in product development, the financial backbone to our software is really, really strong because we've got so many people that's really their primary focus. So,
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
You
Bring
bet.
it on.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Are you looking to vote tonight?
No, I need to get, a consensus would be nice. If you all are giving me a head nod yes, then my next step would be to get a contract in place and start working on a schedule for implementation.
Okay. You
And
got
if
one
we
more?
did that, how long will it take you to maybe hook up?
So as they said, 9 months for the implementation on the billing side. And I wouldn't want financials to go live until July 1 of '24 because you don't want to do that in the middle of a fiscal year just because it messes up your audit reports and stuff. So we would start working through it once the contract is signed and then kind of have it ready to go live July 1 of next year. But billing could be 9 months.
Chart showed us a 10-year expense chart.
Mhm.
What are we looking at first year, second year, compared to what we got budgeted for financial software right now, what we're spending right now on a yearly basis that first year?
We had it broken out in that first, do you have it? The original one? The one we gave y'all at the board retreat, hold on.
If it's in that packet, I can go back and look at it. I've got it.
It's in there. Yeah, it's got it all in there. And, we talked about it at the board retreat. We got to use the ARPA funds instead of pulling it out of, 30 and 31 like we did in 2014. We use the ARPA funds to go towards it. And then we already have built into our budgets the annual cost, so that would just stay in the budget.
I can go back and look at
Okay.
it.
And I
Anything
can
else?
email it to y'all Monday if I need to.
Okay, the next one.
Okay, so next, and I'm sorry, Scotty, I told you 7:45. I was about 45 minutes behind. Again, this is a continuation from the board retreat. This is Scotty Wilkins. He is with Utility Service Group. He is the one that did an audit on our elevated storage tank, the current one at Man Street. And so he's going to run through that audit and what that maintenance contract looks like for them for us to get that tank back where it needs to be.
Thank you very much. My name's Scotty Wilkins with Utility Service. Been there since 98, about going on 25 years. And I believe you've seen some of this information, so we'll kind of go through it quickly. I know it's getting late, and just want you guys to have all the information you need. If there's any question, I'll be glad to answer them. So we'll make it short and sweet. Plus, I have a 2-hour drive. All right. I think that.
Just keep going.
Nope.
Oh, other way.
There we go. Gotcha.
There you go.
So utilities, I guess goals for today's presentation are utility service group introduction. Asset management is something that was coined probably back in the early 2000s. We've been providing asset management. We called it kind of maintenance program, a proactive approach to managing your assets. Back in 1963 when we started out of Madison, North Carolina. We're a local company, father-son owned for many, many years. They started talking about asset management and sustainability. The problem with the country is over the last 75 years, we've not done a good year of maintaining our assets. We're billions, if not trillions of dollars in arrears in infrastructure replacement. And that's buildings, streets, bridges, tanks, wells, treatment plants, things of that nature. And so the engineering world decided that it's a lot more cost effective to maintain an asset at a higher level of efficiency and to stretch out the life cycle. And what that does is for the next generation coming in, it's called sustainability. That means we're turning over the keys to the next generation in better condition than we received it. Too many times in municipalities, the private sector, we kick the can down the road, and what happens is you get into a catch-up mode. So now you have to spend a ton of money to catch it up to where it should have been done a long time ago. And that's inherent everywhere. We're all over the country when we see this. We're going to talk about the Man Street tank and questions. So we have over 500 plus employees, founded in Madison, North Carolina in 1963. 4,000 municipal, industrial, and municipal customers. We manage over 8,000 assets. 18 service centers nationwide, our largest ones in North Carolina and Georgia. Over 50 community water system consultants like myself. World-class innovative technologies and technology financial strength from a global leader. This is just an example of the corporate office, which is in Atlanta, Georgia, and in Perry, Georgia. We have 18 service centers, and like I said, there's about 50 of people like myself, water system consultants. We do everything from water wells to water quality, water solutions. A lot of times THMs was a big issue with municipalities over the last couple of years. We've created and pioneered technology to remove the THMs and to keep you compliant to avoid NOVs from the state. Steel water tanks, that's where we cut our teeth back in 1963. Everything from building to blasting, painting, welding, servicing, basically engineering the whole 9 yards. Concrete structures, a lot of times people think that concrete structures are non-maintainable. That means that because it's concrete, you don't have to maintain it. That's really not true. If you look at wastewater treatment plants and water treatment plants, there's a lot of issues with concrete structures that are failing across the board. We also do AMI systems. We started doing that about 10 years ago. We brought people from the industry together. We do everything from electric, gas, and water. We've been doing that for 10 years. And I think that one lady was saying a lot of the vendors are hosting that information. She's absolutely correct. That is accurate because we host the information, and it's considerably cheaper for us as a vendor to do that than the actual software company. So I just want to share that. So let's just kind of talk about what asset management means to you all. You have the asset condition assessment. We actually provided, I think, a condition assessment about 5 years ago, 2018. And I personally climbed the tank myself, so I can tell you firsthand what it looks like and the condition of it, because I've been climbing probably since 1998, over 1,000 tanks here in the state of North Carolina. And so then once we determine what the condition is, we talk about what's the rehabilitation, what's the solution for that. And then we go on to what needs to be repairs, what kind of coating system. We have in-house engineering. We are a North Carolina licensed engineer. We also have our GC, our general contractor license. We're also ISO, which is a standard qualification. A lot of times for products, we also have it as an engineering and as a service provider. So that means we're kept to a whole different level of standards for quality control. So we have a yearly asset management where your tank, once we bring it up to the industry standard, we want to keep it there, right? That way, when it starts to go down, I believe Gatsby 34 is an accounting methodology. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. So if your tank or asset is being maintained at that kind of level of efficiency and 95% replacement value, you can account for it differently. Instead of it depreciating, it's actually appreciating in value. Your asset's probably about $1.5 to $2 million in today's dollars, as far as if you go out and rebuild one of that same style and design. So you get annual reports. Every year we look at your tank, we look at structural integrity, coatings integrity, safety, security, and sanitary. These are kind of the 5 attributes of an asset management. So you get an annual engineering report that determines those factors. And so, in fact, if you wanted to account under the Gatsby 34, the auditors would ask you to produce that engineering report to demonstrate that you are keeping the tank at 95% replacement value. Full asset rehabilitation. So once we determine what that's going to look like, then we go into the different kind of components of repairs. I think in your case, you have a manway that needs repaired, safety climbs, things of that nature to bring it up to the standard. Emergency services, what that means to you all, if someone shoots a bullet hole in your tank, which happens probably 5-10 times a year, all over the state, all over the country. So that means we're out here within 24 hours. Keep in mind, we're right out of Greensboro, Madison, North Carolina, so it's about a 2-hour drive to get here. So we're constantly rolling up trucks. So our task would be to weld it up to stop the leaking of the tank. Graffiti, something that's also covered. I know a lot of times you have assets that get painted with graffiti. It doesn't have to be something that's offensive to us. If it is something that's bothersome to you or a nuisance, keep in mind that's the biggest billboard in your town. When I come into Benson or Dunn, Harnett County, the first thing you see are these water tanks. So it's really a representation of the town. We also know that perception becomes reality. A lot of times when someone sees an asset, and I'm referring to tanks because that's what we do, a lot of times if it looks really good and clean, the perception, hey, the water's got to be good too, right? Because obviously if it looks like this on the outside, it must be good on the inside. Now that's not only necessarily true, but once again, a lot of times perception becomes reality for our citizens. So let's just talk about asset rehabilitation. I don't have my cheaters on it. Well, yeah, what we're trying to do is give you guys a predictable cost, something that you know you have peace of mind that each and every year you know what your costs are. So many times as boards, I'm sure you've been blindsided with some kind of expenditure that came out of the blue and it spikes your budget. I know because of inflation the last couple of years, it's been really crazy for everybody, especially when it comes to your chemicals, but there's other things, steel, resins, polymers, these are things that have driven the costs up. But we're trying to give you all and your staff is peace of mind and predictability what your costs are each and every year. So what is asset management? This is kind of the definition. A sustainable best practice program for maintaining the asset's quality and to extend its life through regular cleaning and monitoring and maintaining peak performance at a low operational cost. So once you bring your tank up to the standard, you're never going to see that kind of UR. UR stands for upfront renovation, right? We have to catch it up. We were actually the ones that painted that tank, and I climbed that tank back in 2022. We're the ones that performed the actual work on that tank, and I'd say we did a pretty darn good job because the typical life cycle is about 10 to 15 years. It's been 20 years since that tank's been renovated.
2002.
Yeah.
2002.
So 21 years. When we were the same company that performed that scope of work in 2002. And this is from AWWA for all of you who do not know what that stands for. It's American Waterworks Association. That is the gold standard for our industry. So it says a good comprehensive preventive maintenance program can extend the life of an existing tank as well as that of a new tank indefinitely. Now some of the accountings have a problem with that because they want a life cycle of 30 or 40 years, but theoretically if we protect it with a good coating system on the inside and outside, that carbon steel, that tank could last in perpetuity. The only thing that protects it is the coating system. But when that starts to degrade and fail, that's when you start getting to your steel substrate, you start losing metal, that's when it becomes problematic. We see a lot of that at the coastal environment because it's very aggressive. It's more of a 5-year cycle, typically on the coast. Many thousands of dollars can be saved and complaints from citizens can be eliminated if a planned approach of tank maintenance is adopted. So a lot of times you guys only see the outside. You know, for us, we see the inside also. And it does have a great impact on your water quality. A lot of times we have manganese and iron, which are natural organic matter, particulates in our aquifers, in our wells, in our surface treatment plants. Over time, they become corrosive to the coating system, but it can also become bacteriologically charged. So what I mean by that, water at 77 degrees water temperature becomes more susceptible to bacteriological growth. If you guys have ever been into a lake in the summertime and you start swimming, it feels really warm, but when you go further out or deeper, it gets a little cooler. So think about this. Your water comes from the ground, right? It goes up into the tank. That's your colder, denser water because it's coming from either your wells or whoever you're purchasing water from. Dunn
Done in Johnson County,
in Johnson
but
County.
done for that tank.
Right. So what happens is called thermal loading. Over time, when we break 75 degrees, today it was 81 degrees, that thermal loading on the steel substrate starts to heat up. That water in the top column becomes warm, and you start to lose your residual. Now, you probably don't notice it because the first water in is the first water out, right? You have an inlet pipe that goes up the center of the tank, and it's the first water in, it's the first water out because it's stubbed off there. It doesn't run all the way to the top, it cascades out. So it's very important to make sure your tank is clean on the inside. So we kind of use the clean glass theory. So if you have a clean glass, and I know you guys, you know, purchase your water, and I know the folks at Heather Adams and Howard Mills have both done in Johnson County, because we do all the work for them for the last 10, 15, 20 years. You have a clean glass to put your water, but if you have a lot of sediment and corrosion and things of that nature, it makes that water a lot more difficult. Because think about this, the last place that water goes before it goes into your system, before you start turning our faucets and starting to use our water, is that water tank. From that water tank, when you start to demand, it empties that tank, and when it gets a little bit low, you have signals or SCADA that kicks the water back on. So it's important to make sure that we clean it on a regular basis. These are just a handful of customers. We have over 700 assets, water tanks we manage, probably 200 municipalities here locally. Johnson County, we're getting ready to perform a containment blast, the same thing that's being proposed here. I shared with Kim, we'll probably start next 2 to 3 weeks. So we'd like, you know, for her and Ray to come over there and just see what that's going to look like to give you guys an ideal. City of Raleigh, they probably had 35 tanks. We've been managing their tanks since 2000. Town of Clayton, which is up and growing, they probably have 5 assets that we manage. Town of Holly Springs, Town of Apex, Town of Fuquay, City of Dunn. We just finished up their Powell Avenue. You're going to see a brand new Dunn logo that the board just approved over there. It's pretty slick. I think you guys will like it. And we're also getting ready to start the Mary Stewart tank. We're pressure washing that one right now as we speak. We have a crew over there. And in Hardegg County, they have probably 35, 40 tanks that we've managed since probably 1994. So let's just look at your tank. Let's get specific of what your asset looks like. And I can't, I think the pointer doesn't work because it's on a TV. So you have 2 struts, which are structural components. Those are those bars going across the leg to leg. Then you have your bowl, and then you have the top. You can see a corral up there. We're involved in making sure that when Verizon came here to install in your water tank, that it didn't meet telco standards, it met AWWA standards. You know, for someone like myself that climbs, and you know, I wear a lot of different hats. I run crews, quality control, finance. I'm kind of, since I've been here so long, I've, you know, continued to pile things on my desk. We wanted to make sure that before they went on this tank, that one, it wasn't going to impede your first premise and the greatest purpose of your water tank is to what? Serve good quality potable water to your citizenry. That's number 1. 2, we want to make sure safety is a huge, huge component of what we do. We probably have one of the best safety ratings in the country at 0.67. We want to make sure it doesn't impede our ability or someone's ability to climb the tank safely or to maintain it safely without putting ourselves in harm's way. And then third, we wanted to make sure that there was oversight, there was third-party inspections, and so we provided that to make sure it was done correctly and properly. This is a little close-up. You can see kind of the corrosion up there on the knuckle of the tank. You can see some of the antennas. You see that coaxial, that is all to be cleaned up. It's not meeting current standards. Once again, that composes, and that's I believe, your next grid, your AMI system.
Yeah.
That we talked about getting that cleaned up. Your foundation, if, like I said, I don't have a pointer, but you see that nut and bolt, that is that's your base plate. That is a structural component of the tank. Structurally, this tank looks great. This tank can stand here many, many more years, but the problem is you have a lead-based primer, you have a old coating system that's starting to fail, it's starting to peel back. Okay, and then you have your tank bowl, or your leg, excuse me. Once again, you're starting to see that corrosion, you're seeing undercoat starting to break through. And if you see this right here, we call that a weld seam. So keep in mind, these tanks, these legs are hermetically sealed. They're almost airtight. So we don't want to get a breach into one of those weld seams, because if it does, and you start to get moisture inside. We had a tank collapse years ago. I think it was Folly Island. The leg had pinholes around those welds, but they're on the back side. It wasn't on any kind of service program. It was just, they kind of ad hoc piecemeal. When it breaks down, they would fix it. Well, what happens, that goes all the way up to the shell where it joins, and because it corroded from the inside out, no one could see it because it was inside the leg. They don't coat the inside of that leg with any kind of primer. It's basically just raw steel. And so it actually ended up splitting and dumped 300,000 gallons on the ground. This was years ago, and I just started. This is the ice bridge from Verizon. Once again, this is years ago. What we prefer now, instead of having an ice bridge, we want to go underground, because a lot of times your folks that are cutting the grounds, cutting the grass, it can pose a problem or kind of an obstruction. So I think AT&T is knocking on your door right now, possibly proposing to want to go on your tank. We're doing engineering on your behalf. There's no cost to the town. We're doing this as a courtesy, as kind of consultant, that since we've been doing work with the carriers since 1998, we have a very good track record with them, but also we kind of use our leverage as the tank experts in the industry to make sure that they stay within our standards, not their standards. Also, if you see this right here, this is called a messenger pipe. It's on the inside of the leg. Now, I'll show you a picture in a minute, but we rig tanks from leg to leg on the outside. A lot of times they used to stick their coax on the outside of the leg, and we couldn't rig and go up safely up and down. We call them drops when we're moving our staging from drop to drop to paint. So we put them on the inside. It's also stood off about 6 inches, so you can get behind there, you can paint, you can blast, you do it in a safe manner. Also, we had dyed the coaxial white because we wanted to meet the color of the tank, so it blends in, looks more aesthetically pleasing. This is also another standard. So instead of them, you may have seen tanks where they wrap the coaxial over top the catwalk and they drape it. We want to have it cut through so it goes straight up. It's a straight path up the sidewall to the corral. So that's also a safety component. So if you can see, we weld a kick box underneath that to structurally support that catwalk flooring. That's another industry standard that we pioneered. This is your manway. It's actually undersized, so our intention is to cut on the back side a 24-inch OSHA-approved bolted manway. For us, it creates a better ingress and egress, right? So when we're up on the tank, if we're to have a situation, that's a little bit small to bring a person out of that hole to get them to safety. It's easier if we can lower them down sometimes than using our tripod on top to pull them out, to lower them down and pull them out of there. So if we have a proper ingress and egress, as far as if there's a situation, it's safer. But also, remember, we're using epoxies that have VOCs in them. When they're curing out, it also makes for better ventilation that makes it also safer for our people. That's kind of like the center. That's where your water goes for those of you who may not know. When you buy your water from Dunn and it gets all the way to the tank, it goes from that road straight and it goes straight up into that pipe right there. That's called a transmission riser, which all the water goes up in there. And once again, like I said before, that riser, where that inlet pipe comes, it's stubbed out right here. So once again, cold water in, cold water out. So that water in the upper column never really leaves the tank in the summertime. That's why it's important to make sure the inside's clean and the coating system's intact. This is a great example. You can see right now how it's peeling back and starting to break down. You know, I've been doing this a long time, and I always get asked the question, hey, can you overcoat it? You can overcoat anything. But I can't promise you, and I'm not gonna put my John Henry on something like that and say it's gonna last multiple years. You know, the coating system has a life cycle. When it runs its course, it's time to start over and strip it to bare metal. And like I said, we've done many projects over the years, especially in North Carolina since we started here back in 1963. I'll show you a couple other pictures that will help demonstrate that. But once again, you also have, that's like a fungus. A lot of people say, well, Scotty, what's that? Let's just pressure wash off and clean it. Well, over time, when it gets onto that coating system, it starts to get moisture, it starts to build up, it becomes impermeable where it actually penetrates through the coating system. That's a lot of that breakdown you saw in the picture before. It gets in between the coatings and causes corrosion and breakdown. That's an old style safety deterrent. We would actually put a current, AWWA standard ladder gate to protect people from getting on top of your tank. You also see how the coaxes are kind of draped there. I don't know if this is SCADA, but you can see how it's attached. That surely doesn't meet standards. We want to correct that. And then here's another picture how you can see the coatings just peeling back. And once again, that's on a weld seam, so we want to be ultra careful about what's going on there. This is our adhesion test. We took it multiple places. So what we do is called an X-Scribe for SSP standards. And then you put the 3M tape on there. I use, what was it? Like a thinner, I forget, it's called ketone. And so I wipe the chalking, the pigments off of the coating system so we get good adhesion, then you pull back. Now, if it doesn't pull any of the paint off, you have really good adhesion. But if it does, as you can see, we're pulling right down to the primer. Okay, so that just verifies that we're right on the mark when it comes to the application of the coating system we're recommending. Once again, you can see all these fungus and stuff growing on your tank over time. Typically in our service agreement, we would pressure wash this periodically so it doesn't get to that point. So once again, the whole premise of this is a proactive posture, not a reactive posture. Your wing plates, those are what we call wing plates there, and sway rods. Like I said, structurally, your tank's in excellent condition. But you're getting to a point where you're starting to break into some of your coating system and you're starting to get corrosion. It's starting to hinder your steel substrate. Once again, this is another antenna. I don't think this is for NextGrid. I'm not sure exactly. Ray and I are trying to figure that out. But you see how it's zip tied? Not a very good structural application, so we want to correct that. Once again, these are not standard applications as far as connecting points. Also you can see underneath the tank, you see where it's just peeling back. It just continues to validate the containment blast to go down to bare metal. This is climbing up to the ladder. This is where I get to the top. Once again, you see how there's coaxials that we talked about, the Verizon, how we actually went to a penetration. It was nice and neat. These are just draped over the catwalk. Once again, we can't paint that crossbar on the handrail like that. And so that impedes us from doing that. This is what would be an OSHA violation. OSHA states that if I'm on that ladder from the left to the right, I should have 15-inch clearance each way, and I should have 7-inch clearance to the back. So if I'm on that ladder when I go to roll my foot, it shouldn't hit any kind of obstruction. So right there, and once again, I've been doing this a long time. That's just, we call that the path of least resistance. There's probably a local contractor, someone who's not familiar with our standards and what we do. So obviously, it's quick and easy. That happens everywhere. Once again, you can see this is where we're starting to get a little concerned because you're actually having corrosion that's underneath the coating system on the steel substrate. That's getting to the top near your knuckle. Here we're actually penetrating, we're into the steel substrate where we have corrosion points. It almost looks like someone hit it with, peppered it with a shotgun. But I actually got close enough to look, put my hands on it. I've seen that before, but it was not any kind of high caliber or any kind of shotgun. It was actually just corrosion points. Once again, on your catwalk, this is a structural support, how it goes into the shell of your tank. You can see that corrosion is underneath. That's actually on the steel substrate because it's bleeding from the inside out. It's breaking down from the steel substrate coming out of the coating system. This is what we call a cable tray. I've already put a call into Verizon because they did not do their diligence. They were supposed to come back and put a, you guys have seen ducting, old square ducting, old school ducting. Well, what they're supposed to have done is to take it's like a ducting that goes over the top. It sits flush on those brackets there. It covers that coaxial, okay, and we paint it to match so it looks aesthetically pleasing. You wouldn't even see those coaxial. So that's also on task to be done. This just kind of gives you a shot showing when we're coming up on the tank. The one thing we really don't want, we don't want antennas, and I'm not saying it won't happen. We try to avoid those antennas to be on those two corral posts right there. So you have an OSHA safety gate. That corral is an OSHA-approved corral. It has a top rail, a mid rail, and a kick plate. So if our guys are up there working, we drop a tool, it doesn't slide off that knuckle onto the, we call it the kill zone, underneath the tank, outside that tank. Because if it slides off, it's going to probably land 20 feet from the tank. It's not going to be vertical because it comes off on like a radius. Just another example, think about the sun. These coating systems have pigment in them, and over time it bakes it out, and that's where you get that bleeding effect. And it's a little tougher to see on the white, right? But when you have a black logo, you can really see the impact of the coating system, how it's lost its pigment. This is our guys, we just all rigged up on top of the tank. If you see, these things are called kickers, and the purpose of these kickers is to take the coaxial, keep them off the dome of the tank so we can maintain it, we can paint and blast. And the coaxials run around in a circular pattern, and those holes are called snap-ins. So one is structurally secured, it's out of the way, it's not imposed to tripping hazards and things of that nature. This is just examples of Verizon's antennas. You can see that coaxial, it's nice and neat. These are just the empty posts that AT&T are potentially looking at. Now we're going down into the tank. You can see where you have corrosion ladder rungs. I believe we do have in here to replace the ladder because it's already eaten up. So that's something that's because of the long time before you guys have done anything. This is one of the kind of and byproducts of that. We'll replace that safety con here. These are structural beams that are starting to corrode. So we're going to clean all those up, make sure they're structurally secure and sound. That's the vent on top of the tank. Remember, we're inside the tank looking up. And in light of, right now we're working with Withers and Glenn on trying to figure out, he's doing a kind of a modeling of your system. We're working with both Dunn and Johnson County to figure out what's the best way to be able to drain this tank and leave it offline for the duration of the project. So we have a lot of really good people working on this. We feel that we got a pretty good team put together to achieve that. This is just showing you more pictures of kind of where that corrosion. Keep in mind, you guys are free chlorine, or are they free chlorines or chloramines over at Dunn? I think they're chloramines. Yeah, so you got ammonia and chlorine, free chlorine mixed together. It's kind of aggressive. So think about this, and that water, when it gases off, where does it go? Does it go down, or does it gas off up top? It leaves, right? Because you got that vent that's creating a ventilation. So what happens is it's trying to gas off. What's the last thing it's hitting? Those beams, right? And keep in mind, it's one thing if you have a flat surface like this. That's easy. If I'm coating this right here, it's going to be pretty safe, pretty secure, easy to maintain. When you got angles, the paint over time, it's easier for that to break down because it's really tough to get a good coating system on those beams because it's the way they're designed. A lot of edges. It's just a little tougher. This is, remember, we because technology has become a big part of our industry, we're doing a lot more automation, ROVs. This is robotics we dove into the tank with. Once again, you can see a lot of sediment, a lot of manganese and iron that takes place. You can see it on the sidewalls and in the belly. Keep in mind, that's inert as it relates to us ingesting that water. It's really inert as it relates to that. But once again, left over time, it can turn ugly. That just gives you, that's right there at the belly of the tank. That's I'm not sure if that's a SCADA what the purpose of that antenna, that's something we're still evaluating. Your vents, your hatches, everything was secure. That's your vent system, it's intact, in great condition. And this is kind of one of those, do you guys remember 9/11? Okay, when that happened, it was called a vulnerability assessment. These have become critical assets, you know, prone to possibly terrorism. So it was in Missouri, there was an anthrax threat. They had 70 water tanks. So we mobilized 5 crews, and we went out to Missouri, and we were welding hatches shut, shutting vents, and finally someone said, wait a minute, these tanks gotta breathe. Because if not, if you were to bust a main, there's no, like a beverage can, it could crumble, it could implode from the inside out. So we started trying to realize, guys, let's not overreact. So we started cutting ladders off a little bit higher, maybe 20 feet, putting ladder guards. This is a secure vent because it'd be really difficult for someone, they had to literally get upside down, get 2 feet into that and try to tear it apart. We put this on your tank back in 2002, largely because of the 9/11 threat from way back when. So this is just what we had given Kim. Basically, it's an exterior lead abatement and interior renovation. From top to, that's turnkey, that's permitting, that's engineering, everything is tied into that 100%. Another thing that I didn't mention, so Verizon's on the tank. We can't blast and paint that tank with Verizon as they currently are. So we will facilitate with you to get Verizon off of the tank at their cost to build a temporary tower. Now, they're gonna, obviously, we're gonna have to help them find, you know, a footprint where to put that tower or tower on wheels. There's many different ways. We can put a monopole in the ground. There's a lot of different applications we've done. So that would be what we would have to help them do. But they will actually build it, and they will take all their equipment off that tank, and we'll put it onto that temp tower. And then we'll come in, we'll rig the tank out completely with curtains and arms. And like I said, I could get to Kim a bunch of pictures of what that would look like. We're going to restart this same kind of project in Johnson County in 2 to 3 weeks. So it'd be great for us to, we'll go by there and I'll get some good footage for you guys. So just so you have an idea of the project.
What is the town responsible for as far as Verizon goes? When we got a contract with them and they're paying us so many thousand a year to put their, we are responsible for the corral around it.
You own the corral.
We own the corral.
They built it and gave it to us, and they pay us rent.
So it'd be
Okay.
our responsibility to lift it off.
Yeah.
You're saying that some parts of the corral has got to be changed.
No, sir.
No?
Sir. Just the antennas. So if you,
So the antennas, we're not responsible for the
no,
antennas.
sir.
No, you're leasing that spot on the corral, they're putting their antenna on it and paying you.
Correct.
Okay,
So basically, the crowd's going to stay where it is. We're going to blast that to bare metal also.
yeah,
We're going to have a giant bonnet, so we're going to help to mitigate airborne emissions, right? So it could be completely encapsulated. In order for us to do that, we do 75 of these a year to 100. We're just finished up one in Stroudsburg. We're getting ready to do it at Holden Beach, where we just got them all off. I can take the pictures also of the temp tower in Holden Beach, what it looks like. So at their cost, remember, they can't impede your ability to serve good quality water, right? Okay, or to maintain that asset. And so what we typically will do, we'll have a site walk, we'll bring out Verizon, and we'll all meet at the thing. And I know all the GCs and contractors that work with Verizon, and this won't be their first rodeo because I've been working with the same people for many years. But it's our job to give them at least a 180-day notice. Right? That's fair to give them the opportunity because they can't miraculously pull money out of their budget to do this. It could cost them anywhere from $25,000 to $150,000 to go on a temp tower. Now they've gotten smart. They used to rent them. Now they own them. And so there's a lot of other applications we can utilize. But we'll work with them on a location that's safe. They have to run structural analysis to make sure wherever they're going to put it, it's substantially supported, depending on what that application is.
Have you looked at the contract out between us and Verizon with that? Are we supposed to, any kind of maintenance like this, is there anything in the contract that we provide them with a temporary tower?
I don't think so.
My experience is that's really, usually it's where they're required to if you have to maintain the tank, they cannot impede your ability to do that. Now, if I was overcoating this, we'd work around it. We'd have them dumb down their RS when we're up top on the tank, where they would turn down their dial down to RF. But on a containment blast, they don't look. They don't want us to damage their equipment.
Right.
So that's why they're pretty.
No, I'm thinking if I was Verizon and I was renting a spot, I would have it probably in my contract to
Yeah.
say that, because I know you're
try.
going to have to do maintenance, and I would want a temporary tower.
Yeah. And,
Well, I do remember that when this contract came up. Don't remember exactly that, but I do remember that we were responsible for what
The
they were
corral.
setting their stuff, but we were not responsible for any of their.
Right, their stuff, but if we're responsible for that crowd, it looks like to me that if we want to do something to that crowd, they probably got something in their contract saying we got to provide them a temporary corral, and they would, you
Hey,
know,
that would be smart if they did
Right.
that.
But it's not the corral, really. That corral is less than 100% of that tank.
Yeah.
It's the dome, it's the handrails, it's the nomenclature of the tank is really whether the corral was there or not. But that's a good point. Once again, you know, I would encourage you guys to read through the lease. I think you've looked at it, Kim. Yeah.
He's looking at it right now.
Yeah, so I think you guys are on pretty good ground. And once again, keep in mind that they want to have a harmonious relationship. They don't want a confrontational relationship. They have a 5-year lease. They're going to continue wanting to grow their footprint. They want to add technology. Like I said, I've been very, very successful working with the carriers over many, many years on facilitating them going on a temp tower. I think their biggest beef, and you know, I would tell you the first 5 years, it was pretty ugly because it was like us against them. It was like us and Benson against the carriers. But we've learned to work together because they need to be on top of the tank. You know, they have 5G, they have streaming, you know, everything on my phone. It's in my pocket. But these things right here, I mean, because we're jamming so much through these right now, they need a bigger footprint. So their technologies get constantly growing. They're talking about going to 6G and 7G in the next 2 years. But back to the spread here. So basically, you know, we have the ability to spread monies over a couple budget cycles if you so chose. We have a lot of people that, especially because of ARPA and other funding buckets that they've received over the last 2 years, they would rather just pay for it, turnkey, be done, and then on year 2 you start what's called asset management. But if you guys roll out to year 12, you're not seeing a $478,000 cost. You're seeing a $20-some thousand cost. Then in year 14, we're going to come back in and touch up the interior. And probably about year 16, we're going to blast it back to bare metal and start all over with the interior. But once again, this is what we call an asset management. Within this, you have 2 complete interior renovations, 2 complete exterior, 6 engineering washouts, 5 engineering inspections. We're responsible for everything from the top of the foundation all the way up on top of the tank. So we're not responsible for the communications on the tank. We're not responsible for your next grid system, but we are responsible for the nomenclature of the tank. Vents, hatches, screens, overflows, emergency services, the steel substrate, anchor bolts, all those different components of the tank.
How much it gonna cost us?
So in the first year, it's going to cost, to do what he's talking about, the exterior lead abatement, interior renovation, it's going to cost $478,826. Now, we have ARPA money. That we have to use by the end of next year. So we have $1.3 million in ARPA money. We use it to pay for this and get it done in the first year instead of spreading it over 3 years. In year 2, the revenues that you get from Verizon are going to cover that and then some. And then if we get AT&T on board, we're going to charge AT&T the exact same monthly rental fee that we charge Verizon. So you're looking at bringing in $60,000 a year on rental of the towers on the tank or the corral on the tank. So that will more than pay for your maintenance every year, and then we can put some back as well for the tank. If you say we got 1.367 in ARPA, we pay the $478,000 now. That leaves us $888,000. I just looked. Tyler's, their one-time payment for integration is $91,000. We still have $790,000 left over of ARPA money.
And that figure is 480 what?
It's, 478,826.
This is the same,
But that's a blur.
this is the same thing we talked about at the board, right? So are you
Yes.
making a decision on this tonight?
Not tonight, because again, tonight's a work session, as y'all can all tell. But not tonight. I'll get the contract, hammered out with Scotty. I'll get it to you guys at the next board meeting. But that is kind of the direction that I would suggest we go in. Like we said, we haven't done this since 2002. You see the condition, you've seen the pictures. It does need it. We've been talking about it for a few years now. So
We get to choose what goes on it when you paint it, the logo?
we can pick a new logo.
Yes, sir. I would recommend it stay at least the base color to a lighter color, it's cleaner. Plus, if you guys got some kind of logo, it contrasts. What I would tell you is when you get a chance, go by Powell Avenue. We didn't put the logo on it, but look at the logo probably in the next 2 weeks. I'll shoot Kim a note. If you get a chance to drive by Powell Avenue in the next 2 weeks, I'll let her know when the logo's up there. They have, I think it's a whitish color, but the logo is just going to pop off of that. It's just, and plus, I know we talked about the thermal loading, so think about this dark color out in the sun, what happens? Heats up,
Fades.
right? The lighter the color, the less. So think about the thermal loading. For me, I'm a water quality guy. I do a lot of educational seminars with the state for water quality. And we find that the lighter colors, they don't heat up as much. Plus, they don't degrade or they don't, where the pigments don't get chalked and baked out as fast from a lighter color. If that tank was a darker color, remember the streaks on the black logo? You would have seen that across the whole tank. But because it's a lighter color, it looks a lot better.
And I sent you guys,
We do. I told you.
what?
I knew
We do.
there was something in there.
Farm request, the lessor is the town, the lessee is Verizon. The lessee agrees to relocate its equipment on a temporary basis to another location on the property, hereinafter referred to as a temporary relocation for the purpose of lessor performing maintenance, repair, or similar work at the property or on the tower, provided the temporary relocation is similar to lessee's existing location and size and is fully compatible for lessee's use and lessee's reasonable termination. Lessor pays all costs incurred by lessee for relocating lessee's equipment to the temporary relocation and improving the temporary relocation so that it's fully compatible for the lessee's use and lessee's reasonable determination.
So how much you say it was gonna cost?
How much is the-
180,000?
90 days notice.
Yeah, it all depends. But look, I would say this, I've seen that in language before, and we've still got none to pay for it.
Let us talk to them.
Yeah,
But I mean, still, you have the money.
Oh, yeah.
And it
yeah,
needs to be
I'm
done.
not-
Yeah.
just-
Yeah,
Just bring us an answer when you bring us a contract.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'll have an answer, matter of
Got a
fact.
total number.
And I sent you guys, I sent you all an email while Scotty was talking of a picture of, a couple pictures of the temporary towers, if you wanted to see what they look like.
Yeah, I know, well, I'm personal friends with the president of Omega Towers. He's out of Pinehurst, Aberdeen area. And let's say worst case scenario, something where you guys had to absorb that cost, we'd work directly through him. He's a solid guy, and he's helped us out in pinches before, so. But let's first give us our chance to swing the bat. We'll get them to cover everything.
You all finished?
I'll finish if
Do
you
y'all
guys
have
are
any other
finished.
Any
questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate y'all.
Be safe driving home.
Yeah. Oh, you want to do this up here?
No, I'll take it. Thank you.
I'm going, thank you.
Have a safe drive home.
Alan Johnson.
Do you need to approve department reports?
Oh,
Yeah,
we can
we'll
read
do,
them.
thank you.
Do you have any questions on the department head reports? How about that?
Let's talk money.
Let's talk money. Well, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Glad to come up here tonight before y'all. I feel like I am anyway. Since the last meeting, I got an email last Wednesday saying that we have received another grant. This one is the 2021 FEMA Safer Retention Grant. It is in the amount of $291,194. It's over a 4-year period, and it's 100% paid. We don't have a cost share with this one or anything. But again, it's for the retention and recruitment. It's not for hiring. So now this is one of the ones we'll get the grant writer to help me. They get 2% of the awarded amount, so we'll have to pay, well, if y'all approve it or not, because it's already been awarded, but we got to pay them $5,823 roughly. She hasn't sent the bill yet, but that's pretty close to what it is. They get 2% of the awarded amount.
And this is going toward new employees?
No, that's what I'm saying. This is retention and recruitment.
Okay.
So just a couple of things, and we're already pretty much doing everything that it does, because we got this grant back in like 14, 16 in there somewhere. And then it's the same thing, then it's over 4 years, 100% paid. But it'll give us back where we pay for calls, we'll pay the volunteers for calls, for some training, fire calls and EMS calls and training. It'll pay for the new people. It'll pay for the calls, but only new. That's where the retention comes from, or the recruitment. It'll pay for physicals for a new person and a set of turnout gear, up to like 3 to 5 per year, something like that.
So you're gonna pay off that fire truck with it?
It's,
No,
no, it's for volunteer.
you can't use that money.
I make a motion we
Does
approve.
anybody have any questions of Alan? What do you want? You want to approve this?
Hey, he was
I do.
making a
I
motion.
make a motion we approve.
He didn't ask for much.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Thank y'all.
You got
Appreciate
it,
it.
Chief.
Thank you.
All right, Kim.
So tomorrow, we are having a clean sweep, meet at Town Hall at 8 o'clock for breakfast from McDonald's, and then they're going to go out, and Matt Smith is in charge. They're going to do some cleanup of some of the side roads here in town. Offices are closed on April the 7th for Good Friday, and that is all I have for y'all. Thank y'all for sticking it out tonight. I know that those 4 presentations were very long.
So these reports from the engineers,
Mm-hmm.
they're just there for them to read them.
They are there, yeah, I'm not going to go over them. They're there for y'all to read. And you also have my January and February report, since we didn't have a second meeting last month.
Okay, William, anything?
From what I understand, I think this has already been in progress, but I've not had a chance to talk to you. Can you give me any update on water on West Hornet Street?
Muddy water.
Are you talking about one particular?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Has
So
y'all got muddy water?
2 years ago, they put a tap on the neighbors, on the line that the neighbor was tapped into.
Okay.
And then recently, in the last month, he called with a complaint. So we have called ELJ. We think, we're pretty sure there's a main line, but we've got to have a vac truck to get down there to look at it. And so our intentions are to get ELJ in here with his vac truck. I talked to Jeremy today. He should be here next week, and we will put him a new tap. But I want to talk to you offline as well.
Okay.
I was going to text you, but I wasn't. I just got back from Charlotte.
That's
So,
fine.
but we are going to put him in a new tap.
Okay.
So that, hopefully, but I'll talk to you offline further.
William, do you have muddy water?
No. Mm-mm.
We've got muddy water on on our street.
Okay. I will.
Really muddy, or I shouldn't say muddy. It's a yellow color.
Okay. I know the county is doing.
They're doing their.
County and Dunn are both doing their annual stuff. And so I know that that's going to cause some residual. That's probably what it's from. But I will let Ray know. You said it's on Lincoln Street. I'll let Ray know, and they can flush some lines tomorrow. And just for anybody, public watching, whatever, if y'all have that type of issue, call us at the front office. They'll put a work order in. Ray will get out there and flush the lines.
Well, I just found out tonight when I washed dishes.
Okay.
But next door neighbor just had sewer hooked up, and her septic tank had caved in, and they haven't done all the work they need to do there. And I just wonder if they might have gotten into the water line that's leaking. I don't know.
Well,
I would-
I think it's leaking maybe your way. I've got clear water when I left
Have you?
house earlier.
Is it on your hot side or
But now
cold
Ray or his guy now, not Ray,
Will.
is out there every single week at the corner of Lincoln, and he's flushing. I've stopped and talked to him, thinking it was Ray a couple of times, but I mean, he was out there, I think Tuesday, flushing
I'm sure.
the water lines, kind of right in front of your house.
They have a weekly flushing schedule.
Yeah, well, they
We have a
do it.
dead end line, they'll flush it, so.
You have anything, Will?
Yeah, no, we were supposed to have on the sidewalks, we were supposed to get back,
So
but,
Withers Ravenel is going to get us a cost estimate on the ADA plan from last week, but 1 week was not a fast enough turnaround. I mean, it was
okay,
too short of a
that's what Jay
turnaround.
was gonna do.
Well, but
He
when Withers offered to do it and I've paid them for that ADA plan, I said, y'all do that. So,
Uh-huh.
so we'll have that at the next meeting.
Okay, and you're going to also check on the, what it would cost if we did decide
I'm
to
s-
do away with the roundabout.
I'm
You said
still
there
trying
may
to
be
get,
some-
yeah,
okay.
still trying to get information. I've
Yeah.
made quite a few calls today. Angie was teasing me about it, but I still haven't gotten in touch with anybody, so I'm working on it.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
That was it.
Maxine?
No. No.
I'm good.
I'll entertain a motion.
And
to
I make
adjourn.
that motion. Make a motion that we adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.